This is weird waiting room music. I love it. It's so relaxing.
Really relaxing.
That's Yearn Tour Exeth on the keys. Playing the song Cookies that we recorded in 2018 in Oslo.
It's the album you did, right? That's released on Spotify.
Yeah, I guess album EP. Yeah, two of the songs that we played together in the performance that we did in Eckeberga Park, and that was organized by the Munch Museum, now known as Munch.
I didn't say much. Thanks for correcting me. Okay, I guess I'll get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Hunters Moving Image Alliance. HMIA is a collaborative forum for viewing and discussing video and film-based art. We are currently co-organized by students and faculty, Anthony Hawley, A.K. Burns, Daniel Boschkoff, Alina Yekikerovic, Anna Sophie Jesperson, and Lila Dye. Thank you for joining our Q&A this evening with Lex Brown, moderated by Dahlia Bloomstone. Lex Brown is an artist, musician, and writer. Her work is informed by the omnipresence of data, information, media, and how its images condition our body and language. Her work plays with the scale of personal and emotional experience in relation to large-scale systems of social and economic organization. She's performed and exhibited work at the New Museum, the High Line, the International Center of Photography, Recess, and the Kitchen in New York, Red Cat Theater, and the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles, the Baltimore Museum of Art, and the Munch Museum in Oslo, Norway. She currently teaches at Harvard University as a college fellow in theater, dance, media, art, film, and visual studies, and at Princeton University as a lecturer in visual arts. The first 30 minutes will be a discussion with our moderator, followed by a 30-minute Q&A, open Q&A. Please leave a note in the chat if you have a question, and we'll call on you. Please mute your Zoom and turn off your camera until called on. I'll pass it to you, Dahlia.
Okay. Hi, Lex.
Hey, actually, is it cool if I make a request that people turn on their cameras if they're comfortable with it? Is that okay? Is it gonna
Carlos, what do you think?
Fudge up the recording?
Cool. It sometimes chokes it out, but I think we should be okay.
Oh, gotcha. Connectivity. Okay. Thanks. Just helps. I'm not just talking to myself. Okay. Off to you, Dahlia. Sorry.
No, it's okay. So my first question, I already sent them to you, but so it was amazing to see Ice and Cream as this hilarious, all-encompassing self-care company that plans to bring you health and money, but they also, they plan that you can also overdose on self-care, right? So thank you for pushing back on this horrible capitalistic self-care ideal that has taken over the past few years. I was wondering if you think that the work is interacting with the crushing self-care world that exists on YouTube. Since the videos also exist on YouTube, do you think that the algorithms are sort of meeting, and if you want them to?
That's such a great question. I'm just in general, I want to say from the outset, I'm really excited to answer these questions that Dahlia wrote and shared with me. And so I'm just going to pull this up as a talking reference for a second. Okay, so in Animal Static, Ice and Cream, which is this fictional brand, food and beverage brand, was something that I came up with because I'm interested in the plus sign as this, I'm not exactly sure what the word is, but I'm really interested in the plus sign in branding, in contemporary branding, as this signifier of what I'm not exactly sure, but often to me, what it's a signifier of is a business that is part of a process of gentrification. But I don't yeah, I don't think you could say that across the board, but that's why I'm kind of interested in the plus. So as an example, like I thought of ice and cream from like Rag and Bone or like Joss and Maine, or like all of these stores that are sometimes they're like a big box store, or sometimes they're just like some brand that you see on Instagram, but there's just like this uniformity. And yeah, I don't know. So the and I'm really interested in, and in this case with ice and cream, it's like that plus stands in for all of these things that are part of this brand. So on the one hand, they're producing pharmaceuticals, like legal pharmaceuticals, but also narcotics. And then they're also producing branding and class identities through their industry. And then on the other hand, through the designer livestock, which are these dogs where the milk, which is like the cream that this drug comes from, is kind of touted as a way to find self-expansion, or your purpose or DNA. And it's intentionally, these words are intentionally sort of buzzwordy and generic and don't quite fit together. And one of the reasons why I was really excited by your questions is because the way that you interpreted certain things in my work is not how I was thinking of them. But that is why art is so important in comparison, as a visual language, in comparison to like branding or reality television or certain videos that you would see in YouTube that have like a very particular format where you're not meant to interpret it. They're actually meant to be fed to you in a way that you already understand the parameters is given to you. And so you're not meant to interpret it. So yeah, I'm so glad that interpretation is part of these questions. And I'm actually going to, one moment. I didn't have the questions pulled up and I want to pull them up. Okay. I think that the relationship between self-care, which is a term that I don't know the specific origins of the term self-care, but that's a term that has become very prominent because of social media. So just want to say that first. But yeah, self-care has a really complicated relationship with consumerism. And that I think is an extension of the complicatedness. Okay, let's see if I can. All right, that's an extension of the complicatedness of some of the sort of founding principles of the internet and this sort of quasi spiritual but appropriative lens through which a lot of the early founders of the internet, who were mostly male, American, white, heterosexual, okay, that's like the body that they came in. But a lot of those early ideas of people who created the early technology of the internet, and also like computers and like Steve Jobs and all of that. I can't remember what documentary I was watching or book I was reading, but it was talking about how a lot of those people in early tech, you know, they're experimenting with psychedelics and everything, but also with like traditional plant medicine, and also sort of like taking certain ideas that on their face look very like, you know, the whole world, we're all connected. but are actually still rooted in a kind of like cultural imperialism and have this very, very complicated and sort of convoluted relationship with things like traditional healing practices, indigenous healing practices. So this idea of like self-care and consumerism, you can also sort of see that reflected in like Burning Man, and that like Burning Man is this event that was started by a lot of those tech people too, and it draws today still a lot of people who work in tech industries. You have to have a lot of money to participate in Burning Man, but it's like this experience where it's like this kind of like create our own rules, create these like sharing economies in the desert where there are no okay, I don't know full history of Burning Man, but to the best of my knowledge, there, like the desert where that's held in, there are no people. Like there were no people who, obviously it's land that belongs to indigenous people, but aside from that, like actual physical people living on that land, I don't really think that Burning Man, you know, they're not on somebody's actual, I don't know, there's no houses in sight. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so there's kind of like this like premise to Burning Man of like, same premise as like going to Mars, like there's no people there, so we can do whatever we want, we can create the world in this new way, but also bringing in a lot of ideas that come from indigenous cultures, that come from people who are like colonized, without actually acknowledging that. So I think a lot of this like self-care talk is really baked into the internet. A lot of these ideas of the sort of like new age ideas are part of the internet, but it's also in their nature to not, for there always to be this sort of like poaching transaction whereby on the one hand, like, yes, the internet does allow many different people to interact with like many different groups of people who have like traditional knowledge. So in that sense, it is like when Marshall McLuhan wrote The Medium is the Massage, his concept of a global village, like in many ways, the internet is the global village, but like not, it's crazy to see how much that's changed from, you know, just like 2008 until now. Just like the way the internet has changed in terms of like the way the algorithms work, that you have echo chambers now. And so this is actually what some of the things that we talk about in my class, and I'm really interested in, is like the way the algorithms are constructed is that, of course, it's just giving you this feedback loop of like what you're already interested in. So it's actively and reflexively participating in like your belief systems. And so that's another level on which you know, themes or ideas of self-care or like discourses of self-care that really come out of like communities of color and addressing like needs to care for oneself because of the lack of care that is shown by like the structures in society. It's just interesting and troublesome too, how those like algorithms work and kind of like shift and like distort. And yeah, those are my those are my general thoughts. What was the second part? Are the algorithms meeting? Do you want them to? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, I was thinking if you're clearly critiquing sort of like these self-care constructs, do you want them to meet these videos that are actually self-care. Like if someone is watching these self-care videos and your video pops up or is suggested, how that would be really great if you want those to sort of meet.
Right. Yeah. You know, I really go back and forth about that because for a few reasons. One, in order to make that happen, I need to produce at a level that I do not currently produce work at. Like in order for an algorithm to actually be optimized enough to play my video after someone else's video who has like 800,000 followers, I need to have that many followers, or I need to pay for that to happen, like pay YouTube, which I wouldn't mind. And that's a good idea. Thank you. But I also feel ambivalent about it because somehow it's like a lot for me to wrap my head around inhabiting the role of the artist in that way. And there's like a lot of artists who do inhabit that role, and they do it really well. Like, I guess like the first person I'm just popping into my head right now is like Hennessy Youngman, who did Art Thoughts like a decade or more ago. And like that worked so seamlessly, and he was like able to like really fully like inhabit the character. There's a part of me in my practice that is like, I like characters, but I also like can never fully be in the character or something. So that's maybe one reason why I haven't done that. But you know, it's like interesting. I mean, the interesting thing about working in video is that there's like so many different video languages, and a lot of people who make videos on YouTube now, I feel like they're so inspired by like video artists from like the 70s and 80s and don't even know it. There's also types of video art and performance art that people were making in like the 90s and 2000s that now would not be as like, you know, radical or even shocking or attention getting because of like pranks that people do on YouTube or challenges, or there's like this whole format of kind of like social intervention and social interaction that people do on like YouTube channels or TikTok or whatever, that like I'm thinking of like Marina Abramovich's, one of her really early performances where she has all that stuff and, you know, people can do whatever they want to her. There are a lot of people on YouTube who do those kind of things as like social experiments. And then so I think about how much like the language of performance art has fully filtered into like YouTube and like content creation. So the challenge as somebody working in video and performance is to somehow find a positionality with respect to that, or at least that's what feels like my challenge. Yeah. And I feel like that's always something in progress, but for that reason, I can't create the output. Like the output that I create is like, I try to make it dense and like jam-packed because it's so much to process all of these things because they're just changing so much all the time.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, I especially think that when I see like those creators that sort of film themselves donating to people, and I'm like, they don't even know they're doing performance art. I don't know if we should stay on this track or answer the, like 6 other questions.
Up to you.
Okay. Do you wanna move to the next question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. In Animal Static Channel 1.4, the banker says, because this content is so new, it doesn't have any value yet, but I'll see what I can work out. So my first thought was NFTs, which you somehow have predicted with your videos. So I was wondering how you see content value as an artist now. So like, is like content value viewership? Is it how much it's worth as an NFT or like a metaphorical NFT, or does work have value in itself without the transactional nature of the internet?
First of all, I was really flattered by this question because I don't know if I like predicted NFTs, but thank you. I was flattered. And also thank you for reading the work so closely, because I actually haven't been able to have a conversation this closely about the work, and every detail is intentional. So I just really appreciate being here to talk about it. I arrived at those content cards just basically through the process that I use in a lot of my work, which is just to call something what it is. And people create video content creators, influencers exist, and that is their the commodity that they're producing, and also to some extent the currency. And it's true, when I made those videos back in 2019, I don't know if at that time I definitely was not aware of, to the extent that I am now, the people who have like followers who will like pay them to do certain things. There's actually a new app I read about like last week where you can just, people will pay and they'll like basically control your decision making. Whoa. And yeah, it's really complicated because the woman who is the founder of the company is a Black woman, and the relationship between like labor and control is, you know, potentially for somebody, it can be a great source of income where they are otherwise denied options. On the other hand, it is totally dystopian and, you know, psychologically scary. So how do I see content value as an artist? Well, I think that people have a deep need for mythology, and there are certain archetypes throughout all cultures. There's certain narratives and storytelling that is universal to human cultures throughout time. And I think that being able to touch those mythologies or those archetypes, those fundamental stories, is valuable. It's always valuable. And I think that as an artist, what our job is we have to carry a torch forward. Like, we have to keep the light of humanity burning. Otherwise, people will forget. And that becomes challenging. Well, it doesn't have to be. I mean, certain aspects of technology challenge that because of the way control and capital is baked into there. But just the technology in itself is very useful. So I think that value always resides, it's always residing in a place of power and agency of the individual, and also, you know, connection, love, all the things that come from that place, community. And nothing can change that, because you know it when you feel it, you know, like you just, you know. So that's what we have to keep doing as artists. That's what we have to like keep talking about. We have to create spaces for that. We have to create opportunities to talk about the value of those things, of the, you know, the heart, the power inside. Especially in this weird artificial intelligence landscape where it's like, I don't know if any of you have watched the documentary Coded Bias. I think that's what it's called. It just came on Netflix. I just watched it yesterday. It was really great. And it's just all about the bias that's coded into these algorithms. And I lost my train of thought a bit. But let's see, let me go back to the question. The value. Yeah, don't be fooled. It's not intelligence. You know why it's not intelligence? Because yes, we can, basically big part of the documentary is they're talking about how these algorithms are not intelligence. They are optimized for efficiency in doing mathematical computations. That's not necessarily intelligence. And there's a lot of different kinds of intelligence. My definition of intelligence is the thing that can create this plan. This is something that we don't know how to make as people. We also don't know how to make a human brain. So the idea that these technologies will somehow supersede us is like, really laughable and hilarious at best to me. But also, the implications of that are terrifying and very violent on the other hand. Laughable and hilarious because it's like, I can't even get Siri to the Google Maps direction doesn't even tell me which way to go. Like, it doesn't function. And one of the things they talk about in the documentary is all of the errors that are in the codes. But the problem is that when people take those codes to be the end all be all arbiter of fact and truth, then it has very severe implications. People getting arrested, people getting evicted, people being denied loans. So I really don't when it comes to NFTs and stuff, I really wish that people would stop being oh my God, I need to make an NFT. I don't know. I feel like it's this, that's the other, there's this panic syndrome of social media where you're oh, someone's doing an NFT. I'm not doing an NFT. Oh no, Paris Hilton's doing an NFT. I'll never have a life as an artist, which is not true because at the end of the day, that's a buzzword. That's a news story. That's a trending hashtag. That's not what's going to matter over a lifetime. Mm-hmm. And that's not that's not real power, real power is something that one finds in oneself and that one gets by giving power to others. That's real power, and it's free. And just the sun is also free. So there's all these parallels of just distortion that we live in. That is the product of whatever, this long chapter of humanity that, we all feel and kind of sense we're at the end of something and we're will we get to see the other side, or are we only going to be here for the crash and burn and kind of crossing our fingers oh my gosh, please hope we get to see the other side. But I don't know, we might just be those transitional people, which is just something we have to accept and deal with, that we were born at this time and this is our, this is our job, this is our task. This is our responsibility to be these, the transitional people who live with plastic and trash. Plastic it wasn't invented within my parents' lifespan, but they saw the rise of plastic. You know what I mean? We are the generation that has to deal with garbage. Not just raw sewage, but I mean garbage, trash bags, recycling, all of this stuff is so new. It's moving so fast. But it's like, what remains permanent? What remains the thing that we're going to come back to? What is going to crash and burn? And what do we really know deep inside? It's like the truth. And it's like vegetables, it's family, it's laughter, it's the campfire. It's like solar panels. We can feel it. You feel it. Like, yeah, none of this that we're living through makes any sense. And every single day it's like another thing. And you're like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, this makes no sense why anything is this way. So I think as like artists too, we have to show what makes more sense. And keep showing people this makes no sense and saying, I'm sorry, but this doesn't make any sense. And it's very clear. And yeah, so that's why like with NFTs, I mean, I haven't really seen any of them. The only ones that I've seen, they're like JPEGs. I'm sure there's like some GIFs out there. I'm sure they'll enter into, there's like the whole opacity of like the dark web and like cryptocurrency. And it's like, well, yeah, who's ever going to see it again? It's just making, they're just making like, commodity, which is fine. But like at the end of your life on your deathbed, are you gonna be like, wow, I made some NFTs, or like, wow, I made some work that really touched people and we were able to talk about it and, have impacted someone's life and how they feel and how they see the world. Mm-hmm. So that's what I value.
Yeah, this is not part of the question, but now I just keep thinking of your work on LinkedIn. Like, you just need to go and like save LinkedIn. Like, you just, with the distortion and AIs and advertising, I can really just like see you conquering LinkedIn.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's weird. I think that is perhaps like my next challenge as an artist is like, okay, fully get into the game, like suit up, boot up, go into the combat zone. Yeah, but I'm a sensitive person. It's like the same thing where it's like, we have like okay, I can't make that generalization about politicians, but a lot of times, a lot of people have the feeling of, why don't any of the good people or like the non-corrupt people like run for office or something? And yeah, it's like, that's a process of revolution too, is like courage to like step up into the battlefield. And it doesn't all have to be the same battlefield. Like, there's lots of places where the battle can happen. So yeah, I'm going to take your question as my rallying call to like step up into the battlefield of LinkedIn. Be like, well, what are you doing?
You can send all of your videos. There's this company that does AI optimization for advertisements, and they send you like data of how perfect your advertisement is based on every single aspect of it, like color, how big the person like smiles in the video, and like and then it sends you a report of like how it reaches people through their AI machine. And I would just love to see you like send your videos to them and get your report back.
Yeah. Well, okay. That does make me think about another thing, which is like, okay, on the one hand, yes, you can do battle and go into the battlefield, but there's also the technique of like, don't try to fight the thing, just go and create the other thing and like focus energy on creating the other thing rather than getting wrapped up in the, that. Getting wrapped up in a thing that has so much control already. What about creating something new? So, okay, I just wanted to add that as like a balance to the other one.
Yes.
I'm just going to interrupt you guys really quickly. If anyone has a question, just put your name in the chat, or you can write the question in the chat, and I can read it out loud. And you guys can keep talking.
Yeah. If no one has questions, we have many more to discuss. Okay, we'll keep going. Next question. There's a moment in Animal Static, channel 2.2 Overdose, where a character that dies becomes this outlined animated rig with a spline, making this world you have created even further down a digital void. So what does it mean for you to have these characters live in this digital space and become digital, or stuck in the world you've created?
Okay, this is another question I love because your interpretation of it is different from how I intended it. So in that moment, I actually thought of it as a constellation. Like he dies, and then it's like these points, like the head, shoulder, elbows, they get connected, and he goes off into like the heavens and is like spinning as this like constellation. But I love the connection that you made to the spline, because I mean, that is what's so, that's the great thing about art, is symbols and their multi-purposeness, but also to think about like the fractality that technology enables us to see more clearly. That's something that feels very ancient, like a constellation, and seeing a human figure there can also be represented in the same way as like just the points. Like there's a formal quality that is very essential. Maybe also going back to that question of like an artist and their value, is there's real intelligence in form and physical form. And that's a moment where the intelligence of that physical form is superseding my understanding and usage of it, because it can mean something different to you. That you know what I mean? So it's like there's a real intelligence in working with form and addressing things on like a formal level. And as far as like the fractality goes, you know, like the pictures of like deep space where the dark matter looks exactly the same as like zoomed in pictures of neurons. There's all these parallels in the, you know, universal order of things. And it's interesting because our technology, which is born out of this empirical Western idea of like knowledge and information, allows us to see that. But there are, you know, a lot of cultures that already have known about that, like in the Vedas, they already knew about things like that, like 5,000 years ago. Yeah, I don't know. Where's the question again? Let me come back to the question. Yeah, so this question of like the void. Okay, somebody who you should all follow on Instagram is Kenya Robinson, and her handle is Kenya9, and she does these amazing live videos. And in the live video that she did about the Meghan Markle and Oprah interview, which is like a great listen and a great watch, like just on its own. And she talks about like the symbolic function of media. And one of the things that she said that has been like blowing my mind for the last month is that it's dark inside of our bodies. Like there's no light in here. The only way that we perceive light is like through our eyeballs. And even at that, what you're seeing is what you're seeing is a projection in your mind. So I guess when I think about the void, it's also to remember the void is inside of us. And a lot of the conditioning around darkness, at least in like, kind of recent thousands years history, or like Western, I can only say Western because like I am of Western culture, but a lot of the conditioning of darkness is like fear. But okay, this is something I've been wanting to try for like a week or so. So right, the darkness is inside of us. And actually, like, I find darkness very peaceful. Something I discovered, I would love it if we could try this now, is that if you put your hands, I don't know, it might be kind of hard because we're like talking and on Zoom distracted, but just like try this later today and like, please email me or Instagram me or whatever. You put your hands over your eyes, and then I do this in the morning usually. And then, there's usually like an after image that you can see, but if you look past the after image and try to look out into, it's kind of hard because like there's computer brightness, but try to look out into the darkness as if it is the sky. I think let's try it tonight or something. But look out into the darkness as if it is the sky. And for me, there's a point of light that emerges that looks exactly like a star. Like no brighter, no dimmer. It is so tiny, and it's this point of light. And it just happened one day when I was meditating. I'd love to know if you all can see it. So if you like try that tonight or in the morning or just whatever, when we're not in front of a screen, because you kind of have to like, your eyes have to, the after image has to fade away a little bit, and you look, it's like you look at the darkness instead of just being in it, try to look at it. And then there's like this point. So I'm just really curious about, if you see it. Yeah, so the void's inside, but the void isn't scary. The void is like, like we are the void. I mean, isn't it wild? You're never going to be in somebody else's body.
Pretty wild.
Isn't that crazy? You just live your entire life like in your own body. I don't know. That blows my mind every day.
Yeah, it's wild. Okay. That reminded me of Midnight Gospel a lot. Have you seen that?
What is that? It sounds familiar. I feel like I maybe have.
It's an animated show. The same guy who made it.
Oh yeah.
Made it.
Yeah, I've seen some of that. Yeah.
That's what that reminded me of. No one has questions? We'll keep going. Okay. Okay, question 4. So yeah, I feel like we needed like little graphics for everything I'm talking about maybe, but do you see YouTube and the censors as doing similar things? So in your work at the kitchen, it was described in order to see all the videos simultaneously, more than one person had to be in the gallery in order to fully activate the viewing experience. So it conveyed the importance for multiple people occupying space in order for the full information of the narrative to be communicated. So for animal static, the sensors sort of acted as clicks in an algorithm. Oh, great, pictures. So you needed more people to see it, and the more people that saw it, the more it showed up on the sort of interface or gallery. So do you see, yeah, we kind of touched on this a little, like if you see the internet as a communal space or a more sort of evil space, a more nefarious space?
I mean, okay, so the sensors, so the idea with the sensors was that the closer that you got to them, the more mediated the actual narrative would be in the videos, which kind of happened, but kind of, things change in the process of making. But the idea of that was like, what happens when we come to the limit of video. And so now being in like 2020, 2021 pandemia, it's so interesting because like, this is like, we're crossing the threshold of like video that like in 2019, it was like this feeling I had of like, oh my God, like what's the reason why there's all these curves in this space is because I was just thinking about asymptotes and like how it just feels like we're in this like asymptotic space of like things are changing really quickly. And, we recognize this curve as like the climate spike curve, but then to turn the asymptote this way, we also recognize it as like, are we going to get there? It's like a horizontal traveling through time, but like never reaching the limit, like always feeling like, oh my God, we're almost there, in so many ways, like civil rights or like justice or like, oh my God, we're like almost there, like functioning democracy, but like not really, but it like keeps going and it's like nail biter. So yeah, really interesting that there's like two different asymptotic curves. And so the idea was to really create this relationship of proximity between the viewer and the work, and also to create a non-passive viewing experience where a person's body could be involved in the process of watching video. And then the side effect of that ended up being that you couldn't watch it all in the same time without other people, which in the way it kind of operated, I felt like the spectrum that operated on was less like clicks or something, more like I don't know if you ever, anybody here is like a 90s kid and you saw like Legends of the Hidden Temple, or it's like this competition, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a competition game show where like kids were in this like, I'm not sure, it was like a Mayan temple or some like temple. And they, there's like things where you all have to touch it at the same time. Like something like that, where it's like, you've got to touch everybody's got to touch the magic glowing stone in order for it to activate. That's kind of more what it felt like. Or sometimes it would just feel like chaotic in there because the sensors were just kind of like doing their own thing. So it didn't feel like an algorithm. It felt more like lively than that. Whereas like I think of like algorithm as something that like drives in a unilateral direction towards a specific outcome. It was more dispersed. So it was different in that way. And then the internet is communal space. I mean, yeah, the internet's definitely a communal space. Like I get my kicks looking at so many people's funny videos and memes. I'm like, wow, I'm really like laughing and crying actual tears over this thing that this person posted, or like, wow, I 100% identify with that. So I think it definitely is a space of community and create communities of, varying degrees of intensity, or with varying degrees of real life counterpart. It's also totally nefarious. I mean, yeah, it's just kind of like a reflection of our world. But going back to, I really want everybody to watch this documentary, Coded Bias. Going back to this idea of like what's kind of baked in to the DNA of the internet is it does enable, and because the interests of these big corporations, and there's only a few of them, Google, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, because their interests are so much in advertising and monetizing data and personal information. We saw all of that, the last 4 years of the election and just, everything that lends itself to an interest in like swaying people's minds and really playing with our as yet unevolved psychological functions. There's another documentary that's on Netflix that's pretty good. I think it's called like The Social Dilemma or something. That one came out a little while ago. And that one talks a lot about just how these companies, they prey on your vulnerabilities. So that's another place where this idea of like self-care becomes really interesting because, and also like what artists are here to do. Like, I think one of the things that we're here to do as artists in this century is to create better technology, human technology around psychological and emotional understanding. And that is what artists do. Like, we are creating formal devices that, produce these like encounters that are really important, like learning tools for people. They're really important conversational tools for people to have that are completely like, art is the place where these things exist in a way that is not made to be capitalized on. I know a lot of people get, kind of down and out about art and about like, is what I'm doing important? Or like, how can it matter? Like, I feel so overwhelmed. I'm just one person. But you have to remember that the reason why it's so hard to be an artist is because nothing in our world is structured to value the things that we value. That's why it's so hard. And that's why it's like, it is like going into battle being an artist, because, like, you are even somebody who, I don't know, like even the person who wouldn't necessarily consider themselves like a contemporary artist or something, but let's say they're extremely devoted to like landscape painting, that's still like, you're still creating a very important human technology that has to do with perception, that has to do with like awakening people to their own perception. So perception, awareness, the psychology, like that's what we really need to do in this next century. Is we really need to bolster and strengthen our psychological and emotional understanding, awareness. It's also like, a spiritual awareness. That is what's necessary, because we can't, I can't control what the, the surveillance camera is doing over there. It's not to say it can't be controlled, it can't be taken down. That's why I asked that and mentioned like that part of my statement that I need to change from dismantle to untangle, because I realize like, I'm not going to, as an individual, like dismantle anything, but what I can do is I can untangle things, because a lot of this stuff is just linguistic relationships. And a lot of these, everything in our world is designed. Everything is designed. Everything that has a form has been designed, and designs and form begin in the mind, and then they're translated through drawings and through language. So what is possible to do as an artist is possible to untangle things. And another reason why untangle to me is important word that I'm going to use instead of dismantle is like, it's more like a telephone switchboard. Like, energy cannot be destroyed. So you just have to like reroute it into like the right place. And also, it's just so, oh my God, it's so confusing living today. Like, it's just really confusing. So a lot of, I think, what what I try to do, in some ways, I see myself as like a historian too, is like, just need to create a document of like, this is what it is. Like, yes, you can, look on your screen or live your life and see what it is, or like, like I can be in that, but the process of making art is also to say, this is what it is, this is what it looks like, this is what it feels like. And that creates the space in which we can question it. And yeah, we have to keep the questions going, and as artists also to support each other, because like, yeah, we are individuals, but like, we are individuals who represent the idea of individuality. Like, that's what we're about. And there's almost everything else is like asking for us to conform to something. And like, so as a group of people, as artists, we are doing our own things, but we're also doing it to say individuality is as important as community. Like community comes from individuality. Community is not the same as conformity. You can only have community when you have a space that recognizes individuality as well.
Daniel, did you have a question? Daniel?
Oh, you're muted.
No, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself, and I have so many questions that I don't know. We need like 2 nights. Lex, my God, thanks so much. What an amazing sort of train of thoughts, and I'm trying to put my mind together to be able to ask this. And maybe it's not exactly a question, but it has to do with something that Franco Bifo wrote in a small book called Poetry in Finance.
Ooh.
And he recognizes there this 1977 as some really pivotal year of kind of contemporary history, despite the fact that it's kind of way back. But this is the year, according to him, that and other people, that modernism kind of sort of ended, of a particular type of that kind of Fordist modernism. And also Charlie Chaplin died, the same year. And also, according to some kind of statistics, at the same year, more people, due to the proliferation of television at that time, started learning actually language from a machine, pretty much like watching television and then from their own mother or family, So somehow language started losing this kind of like immediate kind of emotive content. And maybe that's for him is the beginning of that kind of when the algorithm slowly is becoming kind of like the not the thinking thing necessarily, but the one that potentially is making the decisions, which was very obvious in 2008, how the financial capital, all those algorithms are making decisions that actually humans didn't make necessarily. No human can actually keep up with that speed and all that. So anyway, I mean, Franco talks about like his kind of way of, I mean, what you're talking about as well, like the role of the artist and who can do something about it, is these kind of small groups in Italy that kind of meet in bank foyers and read poetry for like 15 minutes until they're like thrown out of there. And how he says, like, you won't change the banking system by doing that, but you're changing something of your own kind of like a belonging or permission or self-permission to kind of inhabit something, like even the bank foyer, which is, private. This way you're kind of reclaiming something of that kind of like usefulness of it. And here's like, sorry, that kind of link to what you're talking about. I'm very curious about your book, Consciousness, and what you're proposing there. And I feel like the structure of the book is actually proposing something about like how not only knowledge is structured, but how experience is structured, how art trajectory of an artwork is also structured. So can you tell us like a few sentences about like the structure of that book, the idea of consciousness that you are presenting, the relationship to Dubois, I mean, all that sort of, I mean, we need 3 hours, but if you can begin that and just leave us with something, because I feel like there's some beautiful link there of that kind of, empowerment that somehow kind of is kind of generated in your work. And I made this link between his small book and your consciousness book.
Yeah, thank you so much for the recommendation and the question. I definitely want to take a look at that book. Like when you said poetry and finance, I was like, oh, my heart went a flutter. Also, there's a class that I want to teach in the future called Physical Comedy and Personal Finance or something like that. I don't know. Somehow combining those two, I don't know. They just need to be connected. But also that you brought up 1977. I have an obsession with the 70s and I cannot figure out why. And I'm very excited to read this book. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that point of transition where people are learning through television versus through other people so much. So I definitely want to check that out. As far as the book, well, I have it right here. Okay, so this is a book and it's available from Genderfield. This is like my show copy, so it's like falling apart. It's handbound. And so the text of the book is all lyrics and poems from performances and videos. And then the images in the book are video screenshots and performances. And it's mostly risograph printed. And then so I'll show you. Most of the images are risograph. Some of them are in color. And the chapters are these different color inserts. Okay, the book is such an interesting thing to me, which I feel like I don't normally get into this, but since we're, down this rabbit hole, thanks to Dahlia, because these questions were really, really good. So this book is like, it kind of exists in the future past for me. Like it's the present, but one day this present will be the past. So I kind of, I made it for the future. And I'm not exactly sure how that will play out. When I say that, it's kind of like, well, as an artist, you gotta have a little investment in, mystery and the mystery of time. So it exists for me in that way. As far as like the title and titling it consciousness, that was important to me because that is what a lot of my work is trying to get at. And while not every song in this book is about that, every performance or every piece in its whole is kind of about that. And to me, also this work in this book, it was like a chance to when people are like, I'm in a new chapter of life, I wanted to actually make the book so that I could be in a new chapter of life. So this is like the last chapter of my life. And a lot of this work, as much as it's about its, various subjects that the work was about, throughout making these works, I was going through this process of finding my voice, which I'm still doing that, like I'm doing that right now as we're talking and like having this year of Zoom where I'm like talking a lot, still finding my voice, I had to like find my body. I'm still also finding that, but like a lot of the work that I made earlier on was like just trying to like come to terms with like existing. And so the chapter groupings of the work kind of speak to that, like these sort of formative elements in my work. The chapters are body image, lights, camera, action. Actually, it was supposed to be light, camera, action. It's a little typo. Everyday life, $5.99 or $9.50 for a milk with a milkshake. Say there was a pain. Woods, hello. And all those works are about like camouflage and hunting and like the military. Data trauma, which is like kind of like what we're talking about now. The acid year, which is like, it was about this year I did a lot of acid, and yeah, that'll open some doors for you. And togetherness. So there's like definitely like the kind of like foundational themes in the book. And the introduction to the book has the introduction, let me see if there's a part of the essay. I mean, one thing I touch on in the introduction to the book is that, or the foreword, which is called Forewords, is that I talk about being a Black suburban America, which is not actually, like, I'm not actually supposed to like be here in the eyes of the founders of this country. So there's like a now what quality to my life that's like, okay, now what? Like, well, yeah, this wasn't supposed to happen. You know, there isn't just supposed to be this sort of like free radical Black woman whose like parents are like supportive of her to like do what she may. So there's a level of like freedom that I have in my spirit that, I mean, not totally free. Hey, you know what I mean? I go through it a lot of darkness in there too. Not the good kind of darkness, just like, you know, sadness, depression, confusion, pain, agony, misery. But a lot of happiness, woohoo, haha, hee hee. Oh my gosh, this is all just a funny joke. But yeah, I talk about that in that book a little bit. And so also consciousness is, of course, like a reference to like double consciousness, and to a type of consciousness that is possible now that's like not only my own, I think also people who are second or third generation might feel this, where one is at several jumps away from like the like cultural heritage that you feel, you know, that you belong to, but kind of don't belong to. And then kind of in the internet too. And there's like this kind of like, there's a placelessness that I've always felt. There's also a lot of privilege that I have. And so it's like, what do you get when you have the physical experience of being a Black person in America, a Black woman in America, a woman? What you get when you have that, but you also have like a lot of like privilege and resources, and you have an artistically inclined spirit. And so a lot of the work that I've made is also to like try to understand myself in terms of where I'm situated in history and what potential I can have, just taking advantage of the cards that I've been dealt. And, you know, I think we all can take advantage of the cards we've been dealt. But my particular cards are so inclined as to lead me to, contemplating a lot of abstract things, because my life is very abstract. Like my existence is very abstract. It's not really, as I started to make more work about science fiction, I also realized that, oh, this feels good to me because like I feel like a science fictional person. Like I'm, you know what I mean? I'm out here. We're all out here. But like growing up in like Northern Virginia, which is very much coded by like the tech industry and defense industries and intelligence industries. And I've talked about this at different times, but it's a new, okay, this is where the title comes from, consciousness. It wasn't until like maybe 3 or 4 years ago that I realized that where I am from, where I grew up, I should say, not where I'm from, but where I grew up is all about data and information, but it's all encoded and covert and secretive because it has to be, because of like national power interests. But that really affected me on like a psychological level. It produced a very high level of anxiety in me that I'm like just now working through and able to see that like the place that I'm from affects me. That is like a kind of basic idea that to some people is maybe not like life-changing. Like, oh yeah, of course, where you're from affects you. Or like for somebody who's grown up in a place that has like a lot of identity, like, you know, like Philly is a place that has like a lot of identity, a lot of like knows itself, knows who, what it is. But if you grew up in a place that doesn't have that sense of self, it's like that's something that can also affect you. So I'm very interested in like architecture and the design of spaces and design of civic space and like psychological impact that can have, or that does have on people. And that's kind of like the counterpoint to like all of this, I don't know, that's like the counterpoint I see to like this idea of flattening that the internet does, or like converging that the internet does, is like, but there's still like the specifics of like locality, of place, of weather, geography, architecture, all of these things. I mean, a lot of times I wonder why, like we do focus on identity as something that's in our bodies, but there's so many other containers for identity, like, yeah, of course, class, but like, you know, like, did you grow up in a city on a hill or like by the ocean or like, you know, in the mountains? Like there's so many other ways to think about identity. Like I'm really interested in birth order, like only children, oldest child, middle child, youngest child. We don't really think, I mean, we don't think about these things because thankfully nobody, at least here in, well, okay. I'm just gonna contradict what I was about to say. I was gonna say, thankfully nobody in the US has we don't have like discriminatory practices based on like what birth order that you're in, but in other countries that's like not, you know, not the case. And also in the United States, we do have discriminatory practices when it comes to like, say, height or something like that's another identity that I think a lot about, height or size or, you know, all of that. So yeah, we only talk about the identities that are like overtly enforced as like systems of oppression, but there's like a lot of other interesting ways that we could like think about identity. And so yeah, part of the process of like coming into my own consciousness is realizing too that like, yeah, self extends, the outside permeates the inside too. And right, you might read that on a self-care post on Instagram, like you are one with the universe, which you are. The thing is, like, all those posts are also true. No matter how, they're also true. They're also saying things that are generally positive, or true in that sense. Yeah. Okay, interesting relationship, positivity and truth. Another conversation, but yeah, place, self, and the path to voice, the path to language. Basically, consciousness is also about discovering language for myself. Because when I first started making art in undergrad, I didn't think I had anything to say because I thought that art had to be about trauma. And although I later realized I have my own traumas, they were not what I could recognize on like TV. And I just thought like, oh, because I'm a Black person from upper middle class suburbia, I can't have anything to say about anything, because I had basically been told my entire childhood various versions of like, you're not Black, which is like really fucks you in the head when people, anytime somebody's telling you what you are or aren't, it can like really fuck with you. But excuse my language, but yeah, all of this works. There's also like a path to like self confidence and belief in myself, and like finding agency for myself. And I was really adamant kind of early on about I want to follow my intuition and do what I want to do, even if I'm not really sure if this looks like art or is art or what is this. I mean, I still feel that sometimes. I'm like, I'm an artist, but I'm not sure. Sometimes I feel more like a designer, which I like, like I'm a designer who designs the artist as well. But yeah, it's like a path to claiming my own language and like my own ability to write, to write a rhyming couplet song while also being interested in, critical theory and all of that. Like, yeah, just combine it all, put it all in one thing. Whew, okay, that was the longest answer. This is a really great question.
Thanks so much.
We're running out of time, so I think this is a good spot to end it. I'm just going to thank everybody for coming, and thanks Lex and Dahlia. And our next talk is May 5th with Christian Petzold, and you guys can follow us at 100 Moving Image Alliance on Instagram. Thanks everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was so great. Normally I like put up this slide with like all my contact info, but I'll just put it in the chat. This is my email address if you want to say hi, or if you want to order my Wet Hot Drone Summer, I can send that to you. If you want to, hey Nari, if you want to order Consciousness, that's available from Genderfail Press, and they also have a lot of great books by other artists and a couple anthology books, Genderfail readers, which are great. It's just, I'm really happy to publish with Genderfail. Also cool merch. And yeah, please reach out if you'd like to. And thank you again. This was so awesome. Dahlia, the questions were top notch.
Thank you, Lex. Thank you so much for showing all of your work and talking to us.
Yes, you're very welcome. I hope everyone has a good evening. Take care of yourselves.
Thank you, Lex. Thanks a lot.
And tell me about this thing. Please try it and tell me if you see it, because I really, really want to know.
I'll send you an email tomorrow. I'll do
it. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Lex.
Love you.
Oh, bye.
Hi, guys.
That was great.
I feel like I need
That
to like
was
rewatch
super.
the recording.
That was
This
really
was fun.
good. I
This
wish
was
we had more
fantastic.
time.
Yeah. Yeah, this was one of these things like we deserve a whole
She was
evening.
amazing. Sorry.
Wow.
Can you
It
stop
is-
recording?
Who is oh yeah, that's Carlos, right?
Carlos,
Should I just actually? I think we can hit
Yeah,
stop.
you can just hit it.
oh,